Any pressing announcements that we have? I'll just introduce myself. I'm Paul Peterson. I'm the program manager, and I enjoy getting these programs out and seeing my stamp collecting friends every month. And we're pleased to have Scott with us. But anything pressing before we go? I hope some of you perhaps have a few items for show and tell. I got a couple, but we'll wait for that time. Well, then let's get started. And I want to introduce Scott. Many of you know him, but for those of you, the first time, um, we welcome him back. He's been a member since 2018 and with the Lebanon Club even before that. So we're pleased when he joined us. When he joined us, he'd already been the editor of a newsletter for the Lancaster, Lebanon Stamp Collecting Club. And he shared that, and you've been receiving that since the first issue with our newsletter exchange program. And as I started to get close to retiring and, 15 years as editor, I kept Scott in the background and said, this might be a succession plan. So I was able to work up. My people talked with Scott's people. We worked it out. And as you know, he's had a fine newsletter. His first competition last year, he won a large Vermeil. So we're very, very pleased with that. And I think with your newsletter, you combine with Mike Bach and you now have Reading and the Lebanon, together. I think when we initially started our discussions, we were thinking maybe Lancaster, Lebanon, and Reading in one, but it might be a little while before we can do that. But getting to the nuts and bolts, Scott and his wife Tanya and their two beautiful children and live in the countryside of Lebanon. Because when you look at your house, it's like you're in the middle of country. But and that's all one zip code in Lebanon. I know that because I worked there. But I think you're in your grandparents' house.
Yes, this was once my grandparents' house.
Oh, that's kind of neat. That's kind of neat. Well, I'm glad that worked. Uh, he works for the Pennsylvania or the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Human Services, and that's IT work and computer work that you do for them.
Yeah, my technical title is a business analyst.
Okay. Well,
We
good.
work with we work on the with the contractors who maintain the system that the counties use to
Mm-hmm.
collect and keep track of child support.
Okay, so more than just computer work. You use the computers, but you keep all the money going. Well, good for you. Well, Scott graduated from Cedar Crest High School in '94 and then the University of Pittsburgh twice, first in 1998 and then in 2002. If I remember, Frank Reich was a Cedar Crest grad, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he was quite a few years before me. I was
Okay.
in middle school when he made his first start with the Bills,
Yeah.
and it was a big deal there. But I think he graduated in 79 or 80.
Okay. Geez. Almost as old as me. Well, I will
Yeah,
I will say that I guess he had for a while the record of the biggest comeback in a college game and in a pro game. He had that record
yep.
for, I don't know if he still does, but did he come back to the Lebanon area?
No. But an interesting note about him, his dad taught at Lebanon High School and his mom taught physical education at Cedar Crest.
Hmm.
So, I was out eating one time and I was wearing a Steelers jersey and I kind of felt weird because his mom and dad were sitting there. And I think that week the Bills were playing the Steelers. So,
Yeah, yeah. Well, we always wish him the best. Um,
yeah, they were great people.
yeah, yep. Well, Scotty, he also enjoys local history, Pennsylvania, German language history, cultural events. He collects baseball cards, I guess, since '85 and collecting stamps since 2017. That makes you a relatively newcomer.
Yes.
2017, 8 years. And I think of how far you've come and the things you've had. And he shared a lot of expertise with us on this show, and most of them are available for you to see on our website. So I hope you can take that chance. His collecting interests include Lancaster, Lebanon, postal history, and topics related to the aftermath of World War I. I became interested in genealogy and the Civil War ancestors after the death of his grandmother in 2001, and he discovered a picture of his uncle, Levi Ney, in a library in the Central Park Library, but 46th Regiment Pennsylvania Veterans Volunteer Infantry. And do you know more about him or just that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's one of the pension files.
Good, good.
to
Well,
learn about.
yeah, a lot of neat stuff. Well, we're looking forward tonight, and so please, folks, join me in welcoming Scott tonight to talk about the Civil War pensions. I've been interested in that since I saw a picture of General Longstreet's wife speaking in a microphone. I'm going, what the heck? Maybe you can explain how that worked. That was all based on the pension system. So, without further ado, then we will go on. Do you want questions before, during, after? How do you
If anybody has a question, I don't mind if you ask it during the
raise your
presentation.
hand? Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Well, please share your screen with us, and we'll go silent.
Okay, thanks for the intro, Paul. I'll see if I can share here. There it is. So I am sharing now. Let me see if I can get this full screen. Um, so yeah, my presentation tonight is on Civil War. I call it Civil War Pension Philately. It's kind of a mix of my interest in history and genealogy and stamp collecting philately. Um, Last year I presented on the Columbia Bank and Bridge Company, and that was more of a incidental collecting interest that I developed, because of the availability of the covers. But I actually started getting Civil War pensions probably around 2002, 2003. The archives was really reliable in being able to get them to you, and they only cost $37 for a full file. And now, you send for them, you may or may not get them, and I think they're $80 now for the first 100 pages of copies. And then, like I mentioned, the pension file before I came on, it was for one of my Uncle Levi's cousins, and it had 264 pages in it. But I got all 264 pages for $38, and those days are long over. But anyway, um, the National Archives is where all the pensions are. We were also talking earlier, just to clarify, they don't have covers in the pension files. They have millions and millions of pages of documents. In some cases, they might have letters from soldiers in there, but they don't have, they don't have covers. If you ask for a copy of a pension file, you're not going to get any, but you get a whole lot of neat stuff. If you have a Civil War ancestor that you know of, or if you ever discover one, I highly recommend you find out if they have a pension, because as you're going to see in the presentation, every soldier has a service file and the pension. But if you really want to know the most about your soldier and his family, the pension is where you want to go. So, but anyway, almost all the millions of pages that the archives has, they once traveled through the U.S. mail to get there, and the archives actually sent out millions upon millions of pieces of mail in reply to attorneys, to pensioners. They sent out vouchers so the soldiers could get paid. The voucher got sent back and the soldier got a check. We're going to talk about all that stuff today. And I want this presentation to be kind of an introductory thing. If you have any pension covers or Department of Interior pension office covers in your collection, hopefully you'll know what they were about after this presentation. But I also want it to be of general interest if you're interested in Civil War history, or had an ancestor, or into genealogy and you're looking for ancestors. I'm hoping that this will help steer you towards where you can find more information about it. But yeah, the focus of this presentation is going to be on federal pensions. Confederate veterans did get pensions in many cases, but they got them from their state government. And I know very little, if anything, about that. And if you had an ancestor that fought for the South, this presentation might not be that much help to you, but it could be a fun collecting specialty of its own if you choose to collect collect that way. So I wanted to introduce you to a few of my pensioners. I have files for all these people. Private Levi Nye, his was the photo I found in the library at Colonial Park. It was in a book that was issued for a homecoming in Linglestown, Pennsylvania for World War II veterans in 1946. Somehow his picture got in there. I wish I knew where the original was, but I'm just glad that I got to see a copy of it. He had dependent father's pension. He died in July 1864 at the Battle of Peachtree Creek. And Corporal Henry C. Gaither, he is one of my wife's ancestors. He fought for the 39th U.S. Colored Troops, and his widow also received a pension. I think one famous battle that he and um, his regiment were involved in was called the Crater, and that was a absolutely horrible battle. Sure, he had PTSD, and many of the guys afterwards that fought in that. He eventually developed dementia, was declared insane, and admitted to an asylum. And after he died, his widow received a pension. And incidentally, that was the last pension I got. I ordered it. I don't even think I was charged for it because um, the National Archives, I learned after the fact, they were actually employing volunteers to scan widows' pensions and pensions for the colored troops because they want to be able to make all those pensions available electronically. So I'm thinking I might have lucked out because one of the volunteers might have, been the ones that made the copies of that one for me. But I don't remember ever even having to pay for it. Corporal Edward King, he was in my Uncle Levi's regiment. I know from Levi's pension file that they were friends before the war. They used to run around together or something to the effect that he had said in an affidavit. So I have his pension file. Peter Kreiser, also of Company D of the 46. I think he enlisted later, after the veterans enlisted in 1863. I think they let him go home, and they probably recruited some people. Peter was also in my Uncle Levi's pension file as he was his neighbor, and he was also identified as one of the people that carried Levi off of the field after he was mortally wounded in battle. And unfortunately, Peter lived to an old age, but he died of a gunshot wound in a domestic violence incident. I'm not going to talk about it here, but I did put a link to when the presentation's available on the website. You can follow the link and read an account of it on his Find a Grave website. And finally, Second Lieutenant Thomas Moyer. He was also an uncle of mine, introduced to me by my cousin Beulah. She was actually in my grandmother's generation. She was about 10 years younger, but after I became interested in genealogy, she took me under my wing. He received a bad chest wound at the Battle of Gettysburg and was sent home. He was only part of I think it was a 6-month regiment. I can't remember exactly anymore but it was a short enlistment time. Their enlistment was up in like 15 days, and then they found themselves up against the line of the Confederate Army in the Battle of Gettysburg on the first day, and um, he pretty much he was declared insane, and he was sent to the state at the time they called it the Pennsylvania State Lunatic Hospital, which is in Harrisburg. Which I always found ironic. It was only about a mile or so from where Camp Curtin, which is where a lot of the guys in Pennsylvania started their military careers. But he lived there for the last 40 years of his life, and he died in, I think, 1908. So here's a picture of Levi. This was the picture from the book that I found in the library, but this picture also ended up in a magazine. A friend of mine named Ben also had a relative or an ancestor in Company D of the 46, so he's done a lot of work I'll talk about him a little bit later in the presentation, but he's done a lot of work on the regiment. Here's a picture of Henry Gaither, Corporal Henry Gaither. This picture, the original, is in the Gettysburg National Military Park Library, but this one also came from a book. It was called African American Faces of the Civil War. The author's name was Coddington, and there's a short. It's a really nice book. It has about 50 or so colored of the colored troops, their pictures, and a little biographical sketch from it. And I could tell from reading through Henry's pension file that that's where Mr. Coddington got the information for him. A little bit about service records. Here's a picture of the folder that Henry Gaither's record is in. Basically, all the service record is a bunch of index cards, and they were created primarily for the purpose of verifying service for the issuance of pensions and other benefits. The folder contained cards like this one. These are cards from Levi's service record. One of them has on the muster roll that gave the description of the veterans is on the one side, and the other is a card from the muster roll where the original members of the 46 were mustered out in 1864. Levi re-enlisted, which is why they're called veteran volunteers. And I saw the roll one time when I visited the Pennsylvania archives, and he was like the fifth name on the roll to re-enlist. In his service file, there's also his re-enlistment papers. And one thing I noted was that when he signed to re-enlist, he signed with an X, which tells me he was illiterate. And at the time, I think they were given $400 bounties to re-enlist. So he may or may not have enjoyed being a soldier. He may or may not have enjoyed the excitement, but it was pretty good money for a man like him who was basically splitting rails and doing odd jobs before he entered the service. So the service records are nice to have, but basically they only tell you if the soldier was present or absent. So like it might say November, December 1863 and say whether he was present, and which is nice, but if you want to know what battles the service member might be in, you'd have to consult other resources and kind of draw the lines based on the battles that the regiment participated in, because the service parts themselves aren't going to have information like that, with a few exceptions. I know that Levi, for example, participated in the Battle of Cedar Mountain and Chancellorsville because he was taken prisoner at both of those. So, and if you go to the Pennsylvania Monument, his name won't be on the bronze plaques for the 46 because he was basically away from the regiment at that time, probably being released as a prisoner, or serving his time wherever he was taken there. So those are the service records. This is a correspondence is rare in those, but this is a letter that was in my Uncle Thomas Moyer's service record. He was from Berks County, Charlottesville, and excuse me, he was just writing the adjutant general in Washington, just telling him that he's home recovering from his wound, and he was to get basically mustered out by the end of July. But this was fortunately preserved in the file with the rest of his service records. Now, the pension files, which is where a lot of this philatelic material was generated. This is a picture of some of the photocopied pieces of Levi's file. Most of the documents in them are legal size, so all the copies that I got back from the archives circa 2003, 2004, they're on legal size paper. This is just a picture of some of the affidavits, or a couple the front and the back of an affidavit in his file. Um, oh, back here, this is actually the affidavit that Edward King um, gave on behalf of Levi's father, Daniel. And here's another one. This was from Isaac Kreiser, who I'm not exactly sure how was related to Peter Kreiser, but it might have been a father or an uncle or something like that. There are a lot of Kreisers in the northern part of Lebanon County, which is where Levi and his family was from. The pension files at the National Archives, they go back further than the Civil War. Here's a document from pensioner of the War of 1812s. This came from the file of an attorney named Darwin W. Esmond, and my friend and philatelic mentor, Hal Klein. He shared probably a couple hundred papers from that file that he had been, I guess he inherited them from another collector, but he knew I liked the pensions, and that was actually one of the catalysts of doing this presentation. But yeah, this is an example of the files going back further than the Civil War. If you're interested in Civil War correspondence, um, the mother and father pension files, dependent pension files, are the ones to check out. This is a page from Levi's. It's cropped. The bottom half of the page actually had the names of the children that were home, alive and home while Levi was in service. But it states that his father's name is, or his father's address is the Nye Post Office, which Levi's brother, younger brother Elias, was the first postmaster up there, so he got to name it after the family. But it also states that the letters, all the letters that Daniel received from his son while in the army were destroyed by rats eating them, which is an interesting comment. I corresponded with a guy named George Bradley. He wrote a couple books about the 46th Pennsylvania Regiment, and he made extensive use of the pension files to get his information. And he told me that my uncle Levi's was one of the first files that he consulted, because he knew that that's where, if there were any letters, it might be in one of those. There might be some letters home in his files. And I had mentioned earlier that Levi couldn't write, but I would assume that maybe his friend Edward King or one of the other guys in the regiment probably wrote home for him, while they were hurrying up and waiting to be in their next engagement. So, but unfortunately, there don't seem to be any letters left from when Levi was in service. All right. There we go. This is the pension building, and this is a pretty common postcard. There are hundreds of these available, but this is the building that was completed in 1887. By then, there were hundreds of thousands of pensioners on the roll. There were more being added every year, and there were Civil War pensions being awarded well into the 1930s, I believe. But this is where all the clerks work. This is where all the mail to the pension bureau came. This is where all the mail from the pension bureau originated and was disseminated throughout the post offices in the country. And here's another view of it. I don't ever recall seeing this building, but this building still stands in DC, and it's now the National Building Museum. So you could actually visit it to this day. The interior of the building was so large that they held a lot of significant events and exhibitions there, including several presidential inaugural balls. Uh, and I learned that the pension office moved out of there in 1930, and the U.S. General Accounting Office occupied it until about 1950. So this is what everybody came for, I guess. The Pension Philately. This is the first cover I got that actually became part of my Pension Philately collection. I got it from a dollar box in Lancaster, and this looks like it might be a cover from the early Civil War era. But of course, it could have been also addressed to, looks like it was addressed to an attorney, but it could have also dealt with a pensioner from the Mexican Wars or the War of 1812, even. Here are a couple other covers. The stampless cover up at the top was the stampless folded letter, I should say, was addressed to the Commissioner of Pensions at the time, J.L. Edwards, and it's in regard to the payment of a pension to a pensioner in 1836. And the one in the bottom was just one I picked up. It looks like it also comes from before the Civil War era due to the postal stationery that was sent with, and that one's also addressed to the Commissioner of Pensions. Now, if you're looking for a cover that has a official stamp on, it's not common. I was very fortunate to get this one at the price I did, because you don't really see a whole lot of them. The guy this cover was addressed to, John F. Lacey, apparently an attorney in Iowa. He was also a Civil War veteran, but he also served in the 33rd Iowa Volunteers, but he also served in the Iowa House of Representatives and the U.S. House of Representatives. So I haven't, seen too many of these covers out there, but maybe they use the official stamps for like intergovernmental correspondence or something like that. But they are out there. Most of your covers are going to have one of I call it a federal eagle in the corner, an official business penalty for private use, and it'll have the Department of Interior in the corner card, Bureau of Pensions. I have a bunch of different covers from another attorney who I forget where he worked out of. We'll find him. We'll see him in a few minutes, but they range from like the late 1890s to the early 1900s, and the corner card in the where the return address was, it does vary. Like you could collect variations of it if you want to. The penalty for private use, though, is probably going to be the same for every pension cover you come across. And I chose this cover to show you because of the interesting markings on it. The New York Police Department returned the cover because they couldn't find the doctor it was addressed to. And there's also a couple stamps on there from the pension office. Pension agents were a vital part of keeping the bureaucracy going. It was set up geographically. These two covers are from agents in Boston and New York. But they probably did most of the customer service, the outreach to the pensioners. They sent the pensioners the vouchers that they needed to fill out in order to get their check. They sent their checks once the vouchers were returned. And the interesting thing to note about these covers, I guess, is they used regular postage stamps. So if you find a pension agent cover, you'll probably find a nice banknote stamp on it. This is what a voucher looked like. The pensioner was sent a voucher every quarter, and they had to complete it in the presence of a proper authority, such as a postmaster, and they would return the voucher in the envelope provided to the pension agents in order to be issued their check. Here's another image of a voucher. This is what the inside of a voucher issued to William Stevens looked like. This came from Buffalo. These documents are slightly larger than legal size, so I wasn't able to get a good scan of them. These are really lousy scans of them. It gives you an idea of what they look like, but they really don't do the document justice. The cover on the top is the cover that voucher came in. And I remember I bought the cover and I didn't know there was a voucher in it. So at some point later on, I actually looked at what was inside of it and I was like, wow, cool. It's kind of like a pleasant surprise for me. And the um, envelope on the bottom, which is addressed to the agent in Pittsburgh, that's the type of envelope they would have sent the voucher back in order to, they would have sent it back to the pension agent in order to get their check. Each pensioner, whether it was a soldier or a widow or a dependent parent, was issued a pension certificate, and that's kind of what identified them as a pensioner. It gave information such as what the amount of their pension was, and from time to time, the pensions would be increased. And I have a voucher that has little slips of paper pinned with just a regular old straight pin to the top of it. And the pensioner was supposed to make sure they kept this in a safe place because if there was any question, when they went to sign their voucher or whatever their identity, they could just produce this pension. And the detail of the top of this voucher was what I put on the cover of or the first slide of my presentation. These are two examples of checks. These one came from Burlington. Actually, both came from Burlington, Vermont, actually. Different styles, different years, I guess. One thing you'll notice, it says right on the check that no stamp is required. So if you're collecting revenue stamps, these wouldn't be of any use to you. These two envelopes, I believe, contain checks. These are from later on in 1915 and 1923. And here's a picture, excuse me a moment. Here's a picture of a person signing pension checks. This is from 1926. This was a postcard that was issued at the sesquicentennial. And I'm not going to read what, but this time, not only military pensions, but civil service pensions and all kinds of, any other kind of pensions that were the federal government was um, giving out to people. But interesting use of an auto pen there instead of signing one check at 10 at a time. Pension attorneys, you'll find a lot of philatelic material from them, and this is the fanciest pension cover I've seen. This was from an attorney in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Has a nice Washington Franklin on it. This William Conrad and Company, this cover here actually had a whole packet of information that was sent to a soldier. It had affidavits that they can fill out to send back in to make a pension claim. It had various information. I probably should have I didn't scan the whole thing, so I probably should have bought it out here. I can't remember exactly what was in there, but this next thing was in there. It was kind of like a reference sheet, if you will. And William Conrad, attorneys at law, solicitor, patents and claims. The back of it, they mentioned twice that there was a soldier named Jackson Hiles from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and William Conrad won him a sum of $1,248 for his pension. And Conrad worked out of Washington, D.C. The attorney that worked with my great great grandfather on my Uncle Levi's pension was also from Washington, D.C. But there were other smaller attorneys that worked on these things, such as N.W. Fitzgerald, also from Washington, D.C. But this is just some instructions. This also came with a packet of material that a soldier could either use to file for a pension or kindly pass along to another veteran who they think might need it. This was his return envelope. They didn't provide return postage. This is a notice of a pension award. Jeremiah McDaniel of Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He was the guy I was trying to think of earlier than that. This is a notice that was sent to him that one of his clients was awarded a pension, and I put it in here because it also states that he's entitled to collect a fee of $10 for the work on the pension. This is just a cover addressed to the commissioner, and I included this because it has the record division stamp received. Somehow this got back into the public. I don't know if the government was, if somebody took it out of the trash, or if they were just, you know, getting rid of things, letting stamp collectors have the stamps on them, whatever. But anyway, I put that in my collection because that definitely is a cover that was received at the pension office. As was this one. You'll see this round circular date stamp a lot, both on correspondence, on postal cards, even on documents. A lot of the documents in my pension file have that date stamp on it. Here's an unusual cover because it's on a penalty cover. It has these two stamps franking it. That is because I have the letter that was in this too. The letter contained personal business, so they didn't want to run afoul. They wanted an envelope, but they didn't want to run afoul of the postage penalty, so they put a couple of 1-cent stamps on it. These are the postal cards. You'll see a lot of these as well. First started collecting these piece by piece, but after I was able to get accumulations from attorneys and whatnot, I was actually able to get groups of them that kind of made them a little bit more meaningful. But these were the cards that provided a pensioner or their attorney notice of that either an item was received or an action was being taken. And these are both for the same pensioner. Was the widow of Benjamin Elliott. He was a veteran of the Indian War, as they stated on the card. The one on the top was just about a receipt of information, and the one on the bottom, which was overstamped by the record division, stated that it has a application number on it. So it stated that the widow's pension application was being considered. And here are two more cards from her file, and I put them on there. They're just notices that more information was received from the attorney, but the first one was sent in March, March 14th. The second one is dated March 21st, April 27th, July 6th, all 1908. Just kind of shows you some different steps in the process of one person who was receiving a pension. And I probably should have scanned an award letter. There's probably an award letter for her as well in there. Would have had like a final date on it. I'll have to go back and look at that. But I just thought of that right now. Here's some more postal cards from the Pension Bureau. And these are just miscellaneous ones that I picked up. The one at the bottom I believe, or the one at the top is for a pensioner who's assigned a certificate number. And when a certificate number was assigned, that meant that the person was officially a pensioner. The one at the bottom was for somebody, I guess, lost their certificate and requested a new one. So the one at the bottom was um, notifying that person that they received their request for a new certificate and they were working on it. So this is the end of the presentation. But I thought this was probably one of the more interesting pieces of pension philately that I've ever picked up, and I mostly picked it up because it had a revenue stamp on it. Looks like a draft. It was from a state, it's from Maryland, issued in Baltimore for a pension payment. And when I looked at this first, I couldn't find anything about it because I really wasn't looking at it the right way. It says it's to Nicholas Brewer, who was in the 40th Maryland Regiment, which there is no 40th Maryland Regiment in the Civil War. Um, and furthermore, Maryland didn't issue pensions to any of the soldiers that fought for the Confederacy. So I put it down for a few months. The other day, while I was finishing this presentation up, I picked it up and I found a little bit more information. The Nicholas Brewer, well, first of all, 40th Regiment, headed by Colonel Turner, that was actually a War of 1812 regiment. And I found a Nicholas Brewer who may have been this pensioner, who was alive, old enough to fight in the War of 1812, but alive in 1868 when this was issued. I looked up his obituary on Find a Grave, which is a tremendous resource for almost anything historical, genealogical. If you're trying to find out who someone was, I started going there first. But unfortunately, there was a obituary for him on there, but it didn't mention anything about serving in the 40th Regiment with Colonel Turner. So, but I put this on here, not just cut for the revenue stamp, but because, it's kind of reminder that I have a lot more to learn, um, not just for this piece, but a lot of the other pieces that I have in my collection and a lot of the other pension files that I have sitting on my shelf. So to end, I just want to provide a few acknowledgments, in no particular order. First to my late cousin Beulah Stout Fulmer. She picked me up under her wing when I first became interested in genealogy, and she's the one who told me about Thomas L. Moyer, Mr. Hal Klein. Many of us know him. He gave me a whole archive of documents from Attorney Darwin Esmond, and he inherited it from a collector friend long ago, so he just passed it along to me. So I'm definitely grateful for that to him. Uh, my aunt Catherine, my wife's aunt Catherine too, Catherine Carey. She lives in Baltimore. We just visited her over the weekend. She introduced me to Corporal Henry Gaither, and I finally got around to making a copy of the pension file I got from the National Archives, and I was able to give that to her last week. So she was really thrilled to get that. And finally, to Mr. Ben Myers, I met him a long time ago. We once went to Harrisburg to visit the Civil War flags in Pennsylvania, but he had an ancestor in Company D. Um, oh man, I didn't write down his ancestor's name, or I'd mention him. But he wrote the magazine article that picture of Levi was reprinted in, and he's also written a book about the diary of the captain of the company, George Brooks, is down in the archives of the University of North Carolina, and he went down there and took pictures of it and transcribed it into a book. So if you're interested in the magazine article or the book, the links are there. So I want to thank everybody for listening to my presentation. I hope it served as a general interest, both philatelic and historical. If you have those interests as well, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you, Scott, very much. We appreciate that. I'll give you the.
Yeah, it was a great presentation.
That's it.
Thank you.
One of my questions is, where do you get all this stuff? I'm just amazed that, this ephemera like that didn't get trashed. Probably a lot more did than we know, but that you're able to get some and find relations and things.
Yeah, I mean the pension files, I just learned about ancestors. A lot of those guys were connected to Levi. So I knew about Edward King and Peter Kreiser solely through Levi, and so that's why I ended up with their files. Thomas Moyer's file was interesting. I sent for his file, and it was the summer back when I was still teaching, so I took a day to go down to Gettysburg, and I visited the area where he was in the 151st Pennsylvania. I visited that area. Um, saw that monument. There's a monument to Abner Doubleday down there. I got home and there was a priority mail envelope from the archives in the mail, and it was Thomas L. Moyer's pension. So I was like, ah, that's really cool. Good timing.
Very, very, yeah, but I guess, a lot of them are, copies and things, but it looks like you had some original documents, in addition to the covers. Some came
Yeah,
covers, but
yeah. It would. What would be really awesome would be to be able to kind of unite those documents with ancestors. But I mean, I know a lot of people now, if they even know about their ancestors, they're, you know, probably they might not be interested in them or whatever. But it's just really neat to find stuff like that. And I'd love to. I've never been to the archives in person, so it would be kind of neat to go down there and page through the original documents of Levi's file. But they've the files that I've ordered from them that I've received, they've always been fantastic. Um, and once they came to me in a disheveled condition, but like Levi's, for example, once I figured out, I went through, arranged them by date, arranged them by, the type of pension it was, because Levi's mother actually was the first one to file for a pension, but she passed away. So then his father did. But once you get to know the system a little bit, you can actually take a pile of papers that are like totally out of order, arrange them by dates, arrange them by they have the name of 1990, it was one in 1910. You can kind of put them all in chronological order. And I was really pleased when that happened because that really it was an indication that it wasn't just a pile of papers anymore. I really understood,
Mhm.
what was all in them. And so I did that with all my other files as well.
Nice, nice. Now, when you're, I think I understand the widow's pension, that if the service member dies, they get the pension, or after he dies, after retiring from the military, she gets a pension. But you mentioned a dependence. It's like a parent could get one if they were dependent on that soldier. Is that how that worked?
Yes, and that I think I think one of the reasons why his mother didn't get it was because it was a lot harder to get that until I think 1890. It was easier for parents to get it. Basically, the law stated if the parent could prove that they were dependent on the soldier for like support. Like
Hmm.
I remember there was the Levi's family didn't have a whole lot of money, despite the fact that his brother was a postmaster. I remember seeing in his uh his file that whoever was providing the affidavit stated that his land was mountain land. It wasn't very fertile. It wasn't worth much. Um, by that time, he was incapacitated. His father was born in 1819, so by the time he was, um, 1880s, 1890s, he was really elderly, and I could tell too because I got the list of what he had on him from the courthouse when he died, and I think he had like 103, about $100 worth of possessions to him.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, as the time went on, I mean, there was a lot of criticism um, towards, as time went on about how easy it was to get a pension, but I mean, my thought on that is a lot of people that were criticizing, never stood in front of a cannon or walked across the field when bullets were whizzing by them. So that's
Yeah.
my thought on that. Um, but yeah, it's when I'm not there yet, but someday I'm going to be relying on my children to provide me with a little bit of support. And I think that was probably the idea of the dependent parents pensions back then.
Yeah. I know the way it is, it has been, at least in the last, several decades, is you had to get your 20 years in and then you got a pension. And if you're injured, then you would get a disability pension, which was kind of separate. But yeah, they seem to want to take care of the people. Other questions, folks?
Hi, Scott.
Okay, Bill.
I've been into genealogy since the late 1960s, going back to high school. And I have a Winrick ancestor from Charlottesville who married into the Nye family pre-Civil War. So
Oh
it's a
yeah,
small world. I don't have those records in front of me, so I don't know how Levi would tie into the Nye family that my Winrick ancestor married into from Charlottesville. But I saw that your Levi uh, was from Charlottesville, Levi Nye. So it's probably the same family. Maybe they were cousins, who knows?
we
And
have to talk.
back in the period, I pursued the records from the National Archives as well for my Civil War ancestors. It's a great resource. I'd recommend it for anybody who wants to
Yep.
get into genealogy, who has a Civil War or other military ancestor.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Yeah, we definitely have to talk, Dave.
Yep, you bet.
I'll
Yes,
mention
Bert.
one thing about going to the National Archives to get pension files that I think is important if you ever go, is one, don't take any ballpoint pens. They will be confiscated. You
Hmm.
only are allowed uh, lead pencils and take several or have pencil leads, erasers and so forth, because they don't provide anything like that. Secondly, if you go use the records to get the pension file number, it will take an hour to an hour and a half from the time that you submit it until they bring it up from the basement and present it to you. And then you get a chance to go through it. They have copying facilities to get things copied there. It costs per page. And then you must return the file before you can get another file. So go prepared with pension file numbers
Hmm.
and also the up, going with the index is on microfiche film, and you're going through and through and through because there were a lot of people with the same name. Or if you are looking for a unit, it's not divided that way. So be prepared to put up with some of those things, and they will inspect your bags very carefully to make sure that you don't do like one of our representatives of taking it out of your pants. But anyways, they will uh, uh, search you and be prepared for some of those events.
As they should. Thank you.
Mhm.
I do hope to get there someday.
Yeah. Scott, with the agents, uh, in one of the references you mentioned the agent was paid. Are they paid by the government for working on behalf of the person, or does the person have to give them a cut like you do with a trial?
That's a that's a good question. That would have been the attorney, and I would assume that the attorney would have collected that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Because some people, I think the lowest pension I've seen was like $4, and which, $10 out of $4 is a lot of money. But I know Thomas Moyer, at least towards the end of his life, him and his wife, or maybe it was just his wife since he was in the asylum, was getting $50 a month.
Okay.
So, I mean, but yeah, that $10 fee, that's seems to have been pretty common.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those guys, the only reason I know anything about Jeremiah McDaniel is because of Find a Grave. I was able to find him on there. Um, he was just a local attorney. I think the GAR, the Grand Army of the Republic, helped a lot of
Hmm.
the old soldiers get, you know, navigate the pension system as well.
Mhm.
And one other item is the fact that the amount of pension was whether a full, half, or a quarter disability. And so the basis for the amount of a pension was 1/2 of a month's wager for a common laborer. And how they used that to figure it out, I don't know, but that was written into the rules of how much your pension was. And as the time went on, they got more liberal and liberal of granting 100% pension. And one guy, I have the record of it, is that he complains that he only had a quarter pension and he was getting old and he felt he should be taken care of of better. And so the auditor, the examiner, as they were called, put, give the son of a bitch whatever he wants. So, so some people played the system very, very well.
Yeah. What's new?
Do
Yes.
you know if the soldier's rank had anything to do with it? Because I always kind of assumed that one of the reasons why Thomas Moyers was high on the high side was because he was an officer.
No.
Now, were pensions
Okay.
only given with a disability or just for anybody who served?
You might be able to answer that better than me. But I I'm kind of understanding, like you said, they kind of got more liberal and liberal. So I think
Yeah.
that
That's right. That's right.
I have the file of somebody. He wasn't a relation, but he was in my Uncle Levi's mess, and so I have some of his pension documents. And you know,
Yeah.
he was issued a pension, I think, in the 1920s. So he would
Wow.
have been probably about maybe even 80s. I think he probably just got it for being old.
Okay. Yeah.
And one of the other pensions that I had is that as they were making it more liberal, uh, that they approved a full pension for a guy who claimed he got hemorrhoids from being thrown from a horse. So so there's a lot of humor involved in some of this.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed.
Is
I have a comment regarding parents getting the pension. I saw in the Civil War Institute, one of the programs, they were saying how that they saw records where like a 17-year-old had run off and enlisted, and his father had gone after him and went to the regiment and said, you have to give him back because I need him to work on the farm. And at that time, the legal standing was that a son or child up to the age of 21 owed his parents his labor. Therefore, the Army could not take him away. And this was upheld by many judges.
Yes. Yeah.
wow.
Wow.
And in fact, the fathers often used habeas corpus to get their son back.
Yeah.
And the speaker at this time suggested that that is actually the main reason that Lincoln suspended habeas corpus,
Yeah.
not because he wanted to, arrest people who were traitors or anything, but because they needed these people in the Army, especially as the war went on. I mean, early on, they would give them back without argument, but later in the war, they needed the people and they started refusing.
And all further, deserters or the wives of deserters were not eligible for pensions. And so there was a effort made legally to say that you really weren't a deserter, because there were two types. One that was you just left and you disappeared. The second was you claimed you went home to plow the field and came back, and then you went back to do the harvest and came back again. And so part-time deserters were looked on much easier than somebody who just disappeared.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. I heard a lecture.
Fascinating.
I've seen the guy on the History Channel, but he's also one of the curators down at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, and he was talking about with the Civil War pensions and reenlistments, especially in the beginning. Sometimes they gave out a whole unit, the Congressional Medal of Honor, to get them to, re-up. And so when you see, the numbers of those medals given in that, they weren't at the standards that we see them now with, risking your life and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned earlier Levi's regiment was given, I think, $400
That's
to
a lot of money.
re-enlist at the end of
Yeah.
1863. Oh yeah.
That's a lot of money.
So yeah, there's something interesting that I found in the papers that Hal gave me that I didn't know anything about. I still really don't know anything about, but when I have the chance, I'm going to look into it. There were some documents from the Treasury Department, from the Second Auditor's Office regarding bounties.
Mhm.
And I know that like people were given, bounties to be replacements, they were given those bounties to re-enlist, but apparently they were given bounties out either to soldiers or their widows or whatever after the war was over. I don't I don't know if they were kind of doing that to even the playing field for, men who enlisted who really didn't get anything special from it or what the deal was. But
Mhm.
there was stuff going like that going on even after the war. And I
Yeah.
know there was from reading another um pension file. There was a guy whose letters ended up at the Carlisle War College. His name was Shimp, and he was in the 46th. And something disappointing about those letters is they do have the envelopes with them, but most of the stamps were torn off by somebody a long time ago. I think maybe one or two of them still had a stamp on. But yeah, he was complaining. He wrote a letter to the pension bureau, and he was complaining, that there was these guys that enlisted for 6 months and got $300 or whatever, and I was with the regiment from the beginning, and he did re-enlist, so he would have gotten his bounty to re-enlist, but I didn't get anything special when I first
Mhm.
enlisted, and I think that was a point of contention, at least for some veterans.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of it was on the fly, the need to get people in, taking care of the people with injuries, their families. Good. Other questions,
Yep.
folks? Nothing? Well, this will be eventually on our website, the video, and PDF will be on there quite soon. We sent that into Charlie, and that will be up there. So we do want to thank you very much for
Oh, I have
participating.
one thing I'll
Yeah,
add.
Kurt, mhm.
Is anybody going to Ball Pex?
Yes,
All picks.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to be there and in other words, I'm in an area with only one other stamp collector. And I like to be around and talk about the subject, and so that's the reason I go. And so maybe we could get together and get to
give,
have
give
lunch
me,
together or something.
give me your contact information.
Okay, it's B Stevenson 13 at Comcast.net.
Say that again, please.
Okay, B, all lowercase, B Stevenson 13 at Comcast.net.
Okay, good.
Good. Looking forward to it.
Very good, good.
Joe, yeah, okay.
I have the notice from Joe Sullivan about ball pecks, and I'll be sending that out fairly soon and as the show nears, because he said they're concerned about participation because of the new venue and the new date. I mean, you used to set your fall calendar, for ball pecks, your Labor Day weekend plans and everything like that. And now it's at a different place and things. I think they're perhaps a little disappointed last year with the attendance. So we're going to try to do a good push and get that up, because it's a lot longer drive from Lancaster than it was.
We went
That's right.
last year and the attendance by dealer attendance was a fraction of what it used to be.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah.
very disappointed last year. Three
Well,
of us went. I was
maybe
shocked
we'll,
at the poor dealer turnout.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And really the show was like a fraction of what it was, and maybe it can get shored up again, because if you look at Baltimore, coming down, we enter at 6 o'clock when it was where it used to be on Shawn Road, and now we're going all the way over to 9 o'clock and out and
It was a long trip.
So it's a lot,
It was
yeah.
a long trip.
About weather. And you know, beltway driving can be a challenge anyway, especially if there is any construction. So good. Other comments? I have a couple items, but do any of you have anything for show and tell? Okay, Rob? Why don't you share your screen with us?
Okay, let's see here. I think it's this one. Okay, does that work? Can you see it?
Yep.
So a couple of months ago, Mark Jardell, who I think is in our group here tonight, gifted me a letter for my collection. And as some of you know from the couple of talks I've given, I collect postcards and some letters about North American earthquakes. And so this one, I guess it's not technically a philatelic item because there was no cover, but for me, it kind of fits into the collection. And this is a letter written from Lancaster. You can see that up here. It's two sides of a piece of paper, and it's dated March 17th, 89, which turns out to be 1889. It's pretty good writing, so most of it is readable. And I guess it's not quite the oldest item in my collection. So the oldest one in my collection, so this is a philatelic item, is a postal card that was sent after the Charleston earthquake, Charleston, South Carolina, in 1886. The date of the earthquake was August 31st. And I've transcribed what part I could of the not quite as good handwriting on the back of that. Anyway, the letter's now the second oldest item in my collection. And maybe I'll do a presentation that will include this another time, so I won't take up too much time. But the letter kind of describes feeling the earthquake in Lancaster. And there's some language that I actually don't quite understand. I guess back then they didn't really know why earthquakes occurred. So there's some interesting comments about that here. It was postmarked, the address was 144 Chester Street, Lancaster, which those of you that know downtown is kind of southeast part of the city, kind of near Martin Luther King Elementary School. So just a couple of things I'll flash up real quick without taking too much more time. You can look in the U.S. Geological Survey catalog of earthquakes for 1889. And there were only 9 earthquakes listed in the United States, 7 of them on the West Coast near the San Andreas Fault. 1 was in the New Madrid seismic zone, and this one here in Lancaster County. You can get some details from that U.S. Geological Survey catalog. It's listed as a magnitude 3.9. And in Lancaster, the intensity, which intensity is a measure of what's felt. It was a moderate earthquake felt by nearly everyone. And by Googling this earthquake, I found a short letter to Science Magazine about it. It was written by Dr. Kirshner, who I guess like myself at slightly different periods of time, was a Franklin and Marshall College professor. And I also learned today that as a subscriber to the Lancaster newspaper, you can look into their archives, and the Lancaster Intelligencer was already being published in 1889. And so they had a fairly, I guess this portion here and here was an article about the earthquake, which details how people around the county felt it. And I've kind of copied the text into a file that you'll eventually be able to access. This is an earthquake map of Lancaster, of Pennsylvania, and actually Lancaster County is a fairly seismically active zone. And that earthquake, I think, was kind of one of these over here. So I want to thank Mark for this great addition to my collection. I was very happy that he shared that with me.
Thank you for that, Rob. We'll look forward to your next installment. I think I've already twisted your arm for next year on something, so we'll do that. Other show and tell people. Okay, well, let me see if I can find mine. I got just a couple really quick ones. Desktop. Uh, okay, try it again. I got new computer and new everything, and nothing is working like it used to. Let's see. Nope, I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. I'll have to work on that. The one I wanted to show you was an advertisement from BJ's, and we've had articles. Charlie written one, and Wayne Heim about people selling bogus U.S. forever stamps, in bulk, coming from outside the country. And I recently received this notice from, the monthly from BJ's. And well, you can't see it. It shows a block of U.S. stamps that they're selling 100 U.S. stamps, USPS forever postage, for $77.75. So legally, this is discounted postage. But do you think it's real? Comments? What do you think?
I
Yeah.
heard somewhere that I don't know the reason, but BJ's is allowed, or actually, I think it was Costco.
Okay.
Costco was allowed to put a slight discount on their stamps. I heard that somewhere.
My thinking was that they probably bought it for $78 and they just reduced it. So
Yeah,
that's my guess. I don't think they would advertise it, in a national chain like that. It's not like they can hide under a rock like some of the other company, people do. But yeah, that good.
Joe
Thanks.
has his hand up.
Yep. Who
You want to
else?
say something, Joe?
Joe?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sure.
When you're at a horse auction and you do something with your hand, you often go home
I'm sorry.
with more than you came with.
I was reaching.
No, no problem. I didn't want to miss you.
And the last one, and I can't show this either, I guess. In his column last month, or for this month, Charlie was talking about Interphil, the 1976 show and stuff. And he said for the first two people who contacted them, he would give them a first day cover of this stamp and a cachet from the 1976 show. I contacted him. He just emailed me back. He said, I haven't had any takers. So if any one of you would like one of those covers, the first two who contact him for a Interphil 76 stamp cachet cover, please contact Charlie and he will get that to you. So that's all my announcements. Anything else? Comments for the good of the society? Any good finds at gas? How about we have the show at Farm and Home Center? Okay, they come up every couple of months. We're fortunate to have that. Okay, well, other comments? Well, Scott, I just want to thank you very much. The research you put in and the sources you find, I always find amazing. So we thank you for presenting that to us. And like the thread I made with Rob, I know where you live, and I'll be getting back to you for next year.
Yeah, I appreciate everybody spending the evening with me, listening to me talk.
Well, when you learn something,
Very
it's
nice presentation.
shared, isn't it?
I learned something. I learned a lot too. There's a lot of
Well,
stuff that I didn't know that
learn it for
was touched
yourself and say,
upon
I'll be able
tonight.
to share this to other people. And that's neat. You said when
Yep.
you were teaching, were you a teacher for a while?
I was. I originally wanted to be a social studies teacher, but there weren't any jobs in that, so I went back, did special education, and I wasn't a good fit for that.
Mhm.
But by that time, I had taken this civil service test and you know, that's how I ended up with the state. So I'm in a good spot now.
Oh, yeah, that worked out well. Very good. Well, thank you again. And everybody else, I thank you for joining us. We will be having an auction in September at our in-person meeting. And, you know, that's a time to get rid of stuff or to pick up new stuff for a good deal. It's always great. So we'll be getting that information for that. And I think Cheryl Gantz is coming in September about the Hindenburg and the Graf Zeppelin. So we're looking forward to that as well. A lot of good stuff coming up, and we're hoping to carry it through to next year as well. So with that, then we'll let things go. And Jim, I'll catch up with you for a second if you got a minute. And folks, thank you very much, and Godspeed.
Night all.
And I.
Right, Scott.
I